All right, who is ready for our Tom and Erika Girardi update? Dun 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 dun. So Tom and Erika were due in court last week, never showed up. Tom Girardi didn't show up as individual. Erika Jayne didn't show up as an individual. They didn't show up together. So we don't know whether they're in this together or not. We assume that they're not because she's filed for divorce and she seems, I would assume, would want to distance herself from him. That's just the rumblings and the rumors that we've heard about what's being filmed on Beverly Hills right now. Other than that, we really don't know like what's going on between her and Tom and if there's been any sort of communication. All we know is they were due in court last week. They did not show up. So now, what people were expecting them to do is to have to appoint a trustee, which is somebody that would help them divide the assets and add monetary values to the assets and then determine how those assets would be broken up to pay off the victims. I believe in this case, we're still referring to the Boeing incident, the Boeing plane crash. I don't believe any of the other cases have been brought into this yet. Analysts are sort of predicting that there will be a bigger bankruptcy case that will be ultimately where all of these smaller cases will be looped in. So all of his partners that are suing him, all of the other victims that are claiming they weren't paid or didn't receive their full amounts, everybody else that is entitled to money that Tom Girardi kept or embezzled and didn't pay to them. It's assumed that we're all under the impression that it's going to be looped into one big bankruptcy case and all of their assets will be pulled into it and divided up to make sure all of the bank's partners and victims have all been paid off. Now, because they didn't show up in court and because they haven't appointed a trustee was appointed on their behalf, basically a stranger who now gets to determine how much the assets are worth and figure out how we're going to use those assets to pay off all of the amounting debt and money that he owes people. And again, these are debt collectors, banks, victims, former partners. Like, he had a lot of collateral and was doing like a lot of shady dealings. So at this point, it's probably going to go in precedent. I think the Boeing case will probably be the lead because that's the one that the judge already saw that and determined that money needed to be paid back. And that's the one that's kind of at the forefront right now. I would assume that after that, they would start to lay things out in order of precedent in terms of timing, like who were the first victims that need to be paid off, what money is still owed, and then this trustee would then be able to help determine that from there. But this is likely going to go into bankruptcy court where all of these cases will then become one giant case and he's essentially going to lose everything, especially if he was taking out such high loans with high interest and he was putting up some of the same collateral and allegedly submitting fraudulent documents in order to take out these loans. There's likely not even going to be enough to pay everybody off. But basically what this means is they are no longer in control over their money. We know that their assets and their bank accounts were frozen, but now they have no control over that. All of their assets are now going to be given over to this board, to this trustee, who will then determine how all of it gets divided up. Now, I believe that they are allowed to have some sort of like living stipend that allows them to have like money to be able to like buy food and, make sure they can cover housing. But other than that, it doesn't look like they have any other money coming in or anything else that they can do or use, which is really interesting to see that she's still going on trips. She's still living her life. So I'm curious to see how she's even able to pay for any of this. I'm not quite sure if EJ Global has necessarily been looped into the lawsuits yet, other than the fact that there is a $20 million asset that Girardi and Keese has through EJ Global. I believe there will be a further investigation into what that money was for, what that loan was to be used for. Apparently, the reason it wasn't written off as a gift and it was written off as a loan is because they wanted to make sure it wasn't taxable. But I don't believe that the loan was ever intended to be paid back. But now the loan could be used to pay back now that there's this trustee in place who can ask EJ Global for that $20 million loan, or at least some of it, which would then require Erika and her company to pay up some of the money. But I don't think she really has any money other than her book sales, her Chicago whatever she was earning from doing Chicago, and Real Housewives. Well, and she has all of this, these savage clothing collabs and stuff. But other than that, I don't think Erika really has much. There may be another company that she has outside of EJ Global that she's using to like pay for glam or pay for trips. I mean, as of right now, it looks like Lisa Rinna's, covering the bill when they're going out to dinner. Or, well, and by Lisa Rinna, I mean Bravo. But at this point, it doesn't look good for Erika. Like, Tom's still doing his I'm not well, I'm mentally unstable, I'm mentally unfit, so I can't, make any decisions. I didn't know what I was doing. His team is still trying to play that whole angle. But Erika, I don't know what's going on with her, because if you look at her Instagram, it's looking really bad. There are all of these like really sexy photos. She posted a very provocative photo of her that like really shows off her leg and her stockings. And she's like, I think this is going to be my new dating profile. And then the other day she posted another photo, which was the playbill from Chicago, where I think the caption was meta on meta, which basically implies that her life is resembling the life of, I believe, her character Roxy from Chicago. But I believe Roxy was a criminal, if I'm not mistaken, and was a very shady character, but just like lost and misunderstood. So I don't fully understand what the whole meta on meta play was, because I don't think that looks very good. But I guess there was like a cheeky joke in it. But like, I don't know if now is necessarily the time to be making cheeky jokes. If anything, now is the time to be like kissing the feet of the victims. It doesn't look like she has any remorse. And I would say, for the sake of the victims, I would hope that there is some sort of atonement that she's trying to pay, at least behind the scenes. Definitely, I think it looks really bad. If I were one of the people that was suing Tom because I lost my spouse and I didn't get the money that I was entitled, and now I'm trying to sue him to get that money, and then I see his wife is out there posting sexy photos on Instagram and hasn't reached out to me or my family or apologized or made any public statement, that would make me feel really... like, it would make me feel even worse about the whole situation and think that these people were really shady and I guess it's one thing to say if there were like one case, you can be like, oh, it slipped through the cracks, it got out of my hands, whatever. But the fact that there are multiple cases, and the fact that Erika is now like, it just looks really bad on her. And I know she's apparently talking about it on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but I mean, at least I would assume at least distance yourself from him publicly. Yes, you filed for divorce. Yes, it doesn't look like you have any sort of communication with him, but it just doesn't look good when all people are seeing is social media. And I understand she has that whole, I don't care what people think about me. And like, that's a very healthy mindset to have. Don't care what people think about you. I think that's, a great, especially if you're on reality TV or you're a public personality on social media, it can be very heavy to carry the weight of everybody's criticism and comments. However, in this case, I think you can be a little more mindful or have a little more tact of the fact that there are people that are hurt or feel duped or that think that you're some sort of criminal. I would just think that if I were in her shoes, I would want to do something to take back the narrative or have some sort of control over the fact that, like, if I didn't know, I would want the world to know I did not know this was the reality. I had like, even if people don't want to believe you, at least you put it out there. At least you like show your heart goes out to the victims or the people that feel like they were taken advantage of by Tom Girardi. I would at least try to make sure I showed some sort of sympathy for them and for the situation, and to also just be like, look, I was duped in all of this too. I didn't know. Whether she is or isn't is beside the fact, but I'm just saying, if I were in her shoes, I would want to make sure, if I truly didn't know, I would like to extend my sympathy to the families, to the other clients, to his partners. Like, just to be like, I didn't know my husband was shady, and, I'm sorry that this happened. Let me work to do everything I can. Let me show up to make sure I can help appoint a trustee that can make sure we can clean up this mess and divide these assets. And you know what? Here's my ring. Take my ring. Take my Lamborghini. Take my, all of my glam closet. Take all of that so that we can get this mess sorted out sooner. It just seems like she's like, I'm not dealing with any of this. She hasn't officially been called into any of this. I know her assets are frozen because they're technically community property that she shares with her husband, but I don't believe EJ Global is not being sued. I think it's just being dragged in because of that one, it's going to be investigated because they're trying to find the money, and 20 million we do know was going in loans to EJ Global, and I'm assuming whoever this trustee is or whoever is going to be managing this moving forward is going to try to collect as much of that 20 million as they can from Erika. I foresee that company just filing for bankruptcy. I foresee EJ Global not even being a thing. Dana Wilkie she was the $25,000 sunglasses on, I believe it was season 2 of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She's very much in the mix of all of this. I haven't figured out what her role is or why, if she has any relation to the Girardi family, if she has any relation to Erika. She doesn't seem to like Erika and has done a lot of interviews bashing Erika and seems to have like other insider information. I know she did a podcast episode that basically said that she believes that they weren't as rich as they portrayed to be, or as they were trying to make it look like they were, especially on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She claimed that they had, that their planes that they claimed to own were timeshared with 16 other people. So it was like all of these little tricks to make it seem like we had a lot more money than we actually have, and that they would, do these little things to create this bigger facade. Why they would want to do that, knowing how bad and how shady things were, also very questionable. If you look back at older episodes of Real Housewives, you can see that Erika was very big about flaunting her money. She was very big about showing how luxurious her lifestyle is, which I get, because at the same time, if you're filming a reality show about the glam and luxury of Beverly Hills, then yeah, you're going to show that stuff off. Dorit shows off all of her glam. So it's just, you feed into that narrative of what the show is supposed to be. Jersey, very much based on family. New York, very much based on the hustling businesswoman. Here we are in Beverly Hills, very much based off the fashion and the luxury and the trips and the houses, and it's very materialistic. So I get that, but it also just doesn't look good all around. And I think the fact that she's posting all of these out of touch, tone deaf, I would even understand if she went completely dark on social media and was like, I'm not even going to post anything. I'm not going to address anything. Like, why even post sexy photos right now? That's the part that it's not like you can make money off of it right now. All of your assets have been frozen, essentially. It's not like you have anything to add to the conversation right now, because if you did, I would hope that you would have done that by now, and she hasn't. So at this point, it's like, why are you even posting on social media? Why even post these jokes? Now it's a little insensitive to be posting these jokes. I would understand if we're years later and after the fact and the dust has settled, everyone's been paid off, and then she can make, a joke about how, wasn't it funny about that time I did Chicago and I played Roxy and then my life took a Roxy turn. I would get that. But now it makes me cringe a little bit. But she has no control over any of the Girardi assets. She has no control over the money or the bank accounts. And it's not looking good for her. And I think if anything, now is her time to play ball. And now is her time to really distance herself from Tom, gain, some sort of sympathy from the public, because you have to have some sort of atonement that you pay if you want to be in the good graces of the public, which at this point, I highly doubt Erika Jayne's going to be going and working at Ralph's. I highly doubt she's going to be swiping your card at the supermarket. So she needs to figure out what her life is going to look like and how she can start to build that now that she doesn't have Tom or she can divorce Tom, but it's not like Tom's going to have a penny to give her. If anything, Tom's best case scenario is he's going to end up in prison. And what is she going to do? She has to, now is the time where she gets to determine what her life is going to look like. And if she doesn't talk about it or address it on Housewives, she's likely going to be on the chopping block. From what I've heard, she's addressing some of it and she's playing into this narrative that she didn't know and he duped her. And again, if that's part of your strategy, if that's part of your narrative and your story, then make sure you let the public know that you're trying to pay atonement to the victims. You're trying to make right all of the things that Tom did wrong to show that you weren't complicit in it. And if you're not doing any of that, that really makes me question how complicit you actually were in all of it. I think my theory that I talked about in the deep dive, I'm still very much, I stayed true to what I said there. I wasn't necessarily trying to defend her. I just don't think I didn't think she was as guilty as people wanted to believe that she was. I don't think she was going to be bragging about her luxurious lifestyle, knowing that it was coming from senior citizens and burn victims and widows. Like, I think that you would have to be a really twisted human being in order to do that. I don't think Tom was a great man. I think he's very guilty. I think things got way out of hand. He tried to cover it up. He couldn't cover it up, and that's how it got so bad. And that's how the snowball continued to grow. But again, like, I think Tom was her sugar daddy. And when your sugar daddy is paying for your lavish lifestyle, you're not really going to ask too many questions. You're going to turn a blind cheek. You're going to put your head in the sand. You're not going to ask questions. You're just going to be like, you know what? You handle it. I just, like, don't do anything shit. Like, if I don't know, then I can keep my peace of mind. Which, even if that was the case, then I think she could say something. The fact that she's being so quiet and the only messaging that we're getting from her are these Instagram pictures. Like, it's just... Girl, we need to read the room. Why don't you, like, hire one of Stassi's diversity coaches, and maybe hopefully one of them can refer you to, like, you know, a criminal coach, somebody that can, like, help you be a little less tone deaf. You know, maybe we can put some of those hearing aids in your ear so that we can, you know, just be a little more aware of what's going on, and aware of the fact that, like, you may very likely be out of a job. I know everyone likes a comeback story, but, like, some people... I don't know. I don't have much faith in Erika right now, and I'm losing more faith with the more she continues to fail to show up in court, with the more she continues to fail to address it, and the more time it takes. I think the more people are going to be like, I think when it actually does come out, people are going to be like, bullshit. We don't believe that any of this is real. You could have come out. You could have stood up for the victims, and you didn't. And I think she needs to really get it together. It's expensive to be me. It sounds like it's going to be criminally. She's going to be criminally guilty, or at least have to pay back a lot of money. And now this is getting a little too cringy. But thank you for listening to #NoFilter with me, Zack Peter. Get ready. Lots more to come. Lots more Tom and Erika updates to come.